What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Spark to Fire. I'm your host, Landon Rhodes, and today I've got the legendary Chris Evans on the show. How you doing today, bro?
Great. I'm happy to be here and excited to jam on all the wonderful topics we're going to talk about. Give some value to your peeps.
Yeah, we're gonna do that today, guys. If you don't know who Chris Evans is, other than being Captain America, this is the even better version than Captain America. This is Chris Evans. Where's Captain America from? Is he from, or like that version of Chris Evans? Is he from? He's not from Tennessee, is he?
Now, he's from Boston or something.
Boston.
I'm from Charlotte. I wasn't born here, but I've been here for a long time.
Awesome. So we've got Chris Evans. He's an entrepreneur, real estate investor, author of The Intelligent Advertiser, and he is the co-founder of Evans and Welch, the parent company to Traffic and Funnels and Sales Mentor, which is probably how a lot of you guys have heard his name before. And these companies have trained more than 150,000 individual business owners, sales professionals, and freelancers. That's a lot. That's since 2015, the organization quickly became a rising star in the online education arena. So coaching, consulting, and business, and currently headquartered in Nashville. And you guys have just been killing it. And then obviously we're going to talk about some of the changes that have happened as a result of like things with Evans and Welch. But before we get into all of that stuff, I would love to just start off by asking you, what what got you into, I'm going to start over that. You guys can cut that out. What got you guys into marketing and advertising to start with?
I actually had so years ago I started a local business, a garage door company. I didn't know anything about it, but I just kind of fell into it. My friend had one about an hour and a half away. And so out of that, I had a necessity to learn how to market a business. Then I discovered SEO. And then when SEO changed, I discovered paid advertising. And then I started doing that with other people and I just fell in love with it. I just fell in love with the ability to, put money into Google or Facebook and get leads and be able to control essentially my destiny. I had heard this guy one time say, if you can figure out how to spend $1 on an ad and make $2 back, you'll never have to worry about money again. And it's just like, this crazy revelation. And so that just propelled me into mastering that craft and uh, did service work for several clients, wrote webinars and copy, and did product launches and ran their ads. And then met my business partner Taylor on Facebook back in 2015. He was writing copy for people. I was mostly on the ad side, running Facebook ads, and it just seemed like a really good fit for what he did and what I did for us to work together. And so we were doing some service work, and then we just kind of slowly got into the consulting stuff, and man, just took off like a rocket ship. We were just like really kind of the perfect combination um, to work together, and just exploded. And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah. So how old were you when you started that garage store company again?
Man, I must have been, gosh, my early 30s.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And were you working
I
like
didn't
W-2 jobs before that, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was working in the real estate and mortgage industry, and I always had like an entrepreneurial thing. Like I was always independent, always wanted to do that kind of stuff. And when my I told my friend, I was like, "Man, you should really open up in the Charlotte market because it's just booming and it's hot." And he's like, "No, man, you should do it, and I'll help you." And so I just took out a phone book ad. I got a cell phone, took out a phone book ad for a garage door company. Um, and this is when phone book ads obviously were still around at the end of it. And my phone started ringing. I would just take the call because I'm good with people and I can connect. And I had no idea what I was talking about. And so I would just, take the call and schedule the appointment. And then I would outsource the work to his guys.
Awesome.
Um, so that business is actually still around. My brother has it now. And yeah, he's doing it and it's doing well.
At the height of your garage door company, like what were you guys doing in revenue?
Oh my gosh, you're not that much. Like maybe I mean when I was involved so long ago, maybe 7 grand a month, 8 grand a month, um, take home. We probably got like total gross 20, 25 grand a month,
Mhm.
which isn't shabby. but
Yeah. And you guys weren't doing,
it's a lot of work.
well, you weren't responsible for any of the materials or the labor or anything, right?
Well, at one point we became responsible, yeah. So my dad moved up from Alabama, my brother, and they got involved, and so it wasn't enough to feed three families. So I was like, y'all just take this. I'm gonna go do this online thing, and that's kind of how I got into running online campaigns for people.
Wild. That's awesome.
Yep.
And so you guys work together to build the beginning of traffic and funnels, and talk a little bit about like what was your guys' first product? What did you do that like was your guys' launch pad? What was that product?
We had several different things. So we had a few done for you clients where we were writing their webinars, running ads, writing copy. Um, and that's just tedious. It's a lot of work, and it's really difficult when you own so much of the scope of work, but not all of it, right? And pretty soon after we connected, we actually launched a consulting offer too. We went out and sold three clients, three different industries, and we just get on the phone and say, "Oh yeah, we could help you with that." And we had never done that before, but we had confidence that we could figure it out, and that was just kind of what we did. And so out of that process, me being really good at paid ads and writing webinars, and Taylor being really good at copy, and then got good at sales, the combination just really worked. So I would fill up the calendar, and then he would get on the phone and close his people. So I still had a really heavy client load until the beginning or end of 2015, and I started shedding those clients, and just we went all in on traffic and funnels January 1st of 2016. The last 2 months of that December in 2015, we took off, but we left the ads on and just filled up the calendar for the first 2 weeks of January, and like literally just filled up of people that wanted to talk to us. And it was wild because in December I think we did like 30 grand, and then that January when we went all in, we did 127,000. And yeah, that's like I came from ministry and never having money growing up. Taylor came from ministry and he was broke as a joke. To just like our first like full month doing six figures was just wild. We're like, we're the king of the world. And then the next month we did like 30 something grand. I was like, oh my God, we don't know what we're doing. We're failing. But it was just a rut, and we bounced back and just continued to grow and grow. And yeah, it was pretty wild how fast we just exploded onto the scene, and um, just I think kind of captured the industry. There were some great businesses and organizations that were in, but I think our vibe was a little bit different because there wasn't really a partnership like ours in the consulting industry. And we were just crazy, man. Like our marketing was crazy. It was loud. If you ever seen Taylor, you know how he is. We make fun of each other, so it was a pretty wild time, and just captured a lot of attention.
Mhm. Yeah, and what you did with that attention is I mean, you guys helped a ton of people too. Even 150,000 individual business owners over the time that you've, ran this business. That's powerful. Those people don't do that in two lifetimes sometimes. So it's a powerful thing. And I'm curious if you know, what how long did it take you to develop that skill set of where you were good at writing copy, good at building out webinars? Like how long did that take you?
Honestly, it wasn't that long because I was in the trenches doing it. And so the most important thing about marketing, I think, is understanding that you have to have a feedback loop. And the thing is, people they don't put things out, and so they don't have a feedback loop, and so they can't change their messaging. So I was so in the trenches and testing things every day that I was able to put something out, kind of get that ping back and see, okay, are people responding or not? So man, a year or so I was pretty proficient, but it's just something that you never stop learning, right? Like you have the fundamentals and the intuition of marketing, but markets change and they evolve. And so if you don't if you don't roll with that, then you'll get atrophied and ineffective. So um, it wasn't that long for me, and I think the more you can be active as a marketer, the faster. you'll become great.
That's good. That was actually my next question I was going to ask you is what skill the young business owners need to do when they first get started. So is that advice carry over or do you think there's something else?
100% sales and marketing. That's the game. Like if I could go all the way back, even as like a younger person in my 20s, I would work for free for a really good marketing sales organization. And which is funny, like the guy who just took over our company, he interned for us,
Yeah,
right? And he
that's
worked for
awesome.
free. And then he got promoted and he became a marketer and I mentored him in marketing and he already had a really great marketing skill set. So I'm not like I created him, but obviously contributed a lot to his path and journey. And now he's taken over the company, he's running it and just building it to I think a better place than it's ever been.
Mhm. And so that's a really interesting point that you said about feedback loops, though. Like the exposure that he got, whether, coming in with the skill set is one thing, but then having the exposure opportunity that you get of saying, like, you guys had huge budgets. What were you spending on advertising per month? Like, what was the most you ever spent per month?
Dude, the most that we ever spent between both of our primary businesses was probably close to $1 million in 1 month.
That's awesome. And did you have like an average ROAS between all of that? Like, did you know if you put $1 in, you're going to get two, three, $4 out?
Yeah, I mean that was actually a stupid month because the media buyer that was responsible for one of the companies spent way too much. But yeah, like the ROAS that I like to see is 5 to 10. Like we didn't do that month, unfortunately. That would have been great. But when you're scaling, you might see a 3x ROAS or a 4x ROAS because there's so many other considerations as well, right? Um, but yeah, it's kind of what we were hitting back then in those days.
Hmm. And what what would you do if you had to go back and start over again? You mentioned that you would go and you'd sit under somebody that's doing an incredible work in sales and marketing. But what type of business would you build today if you were going to go back and do it all over?
Mm. I don't know that I would build a different business from coaching and consulting because it's something that has been a good fit for me and it's been natural. I think if just from like a sheer like standpoint of scale, I would probably go with something that was more consumer centric versus business centric. There's a lot more scalability, like if you're in the health space or financial space or something like that versus B2B.
Yeah. Yeah, but also less people to go through. If
Hmm.
you have, and that's you guys are working primarily with coaches, experts, and consultants. But like, and obviously you get around all of the board decisions, right? Like, I don't have to like check in with anybody most of the time because they are the leader, they are the decision maker. That's one thing we've noticed too with our agency is that some of those sales cycles tend to be really long because you go and you talk to somebody what day one and then day 45 finally they're closing or day 30 they're closing. So
Yep.
that's a really interesting point. And so you love this that much that you would do this all over again if you were starting over, and you kind of are. So I think we should also like let's fill the rest of the audience in that doesn't know what walk us through kind of the events that happened as a result of Ashton taking over as the CEO of Evans and Welch.
Yeah, so I sat back for 30 days. We've been feeling for a while that it's we need to bring someone else in because we've been doing this for 7 years. Like we've been running hard for 7 years, built multiple businesses, and I know that I feel like for a while that it's probably time for me to slow down a little bit. Um, and so we finally pulled the trigger this last month to bring in someone, and that was Ashton to take over the businesses and basically myself and Taylor move into more advisor roles um, and just coach and mentor where we can. So that's brought me to I took a 30-day sabbatical just to rest and recoup from an intense season and then just kind of start to figure out I was like, okay, after this, what's next for me? So that's kind of the process I'm in now is man, like what do I want my life to look like with my kids? So my daughter's 18 and her graduating this year. She just graduated in May and then going off to school in August. It's just given me a lot of perspective as I've built these businesses and have my kids here. It's like it's hitting me that they will not be here forever. And there's only so much time that I have with them and to really invest into them and to be present and not only be present with them, but to make sure that my state is good. And I was thinking about this the other day. It's like you did a lot of people talk about being present with your family, but presence is not the only thing. You could be present and have a terrible state. Right? If you don't carry a state of peace and joy and happiness and contentment and fulfillment, a lot of times you find yourself present, but you have the opposite of that. You're stressed out, you have anxiety, you're concerned about all these different things, all the cares of the world. And I just don't want to live my life like that, man. And um, I didn't have the discipline or knowledge or experience or someone coach me through that before. And so I think that's some of that I could potentially do in this next phase of my own Chris Evans business is having all the wisdom of, yeah, I know how to grow businesses. I can scale businesses and hire people and all that kind of stuff. But how do you live in the midst of that? That is the most important thing, I think. And just going through my own process of questioning, okay, things I would do different, which would be a lot of different things. But I think one of the things I would do differently is I wouldn't have scaled and grown so fast. And I think we live in a place in our culture in America where it's all about scale and it's all about growth and it's all about grinding and it's all about crushing it and it's all about more and more and more. But that I think just does not satisfy and it leaves a lot of emptiness for a lot of people to where maybe they've grown businesses and they've scaled, but then they look back and their family doesn't like them or doesn't know them or they've got their own issues because of the state that these entrepreneurs walked in that process. And so yeah, there's a lot that I can speak to in that and help entrepreneurs with.
And maybe is that foreshadowing for what you're thinking next? Like you've since you've already walked that path, do you see yourself looking back and helping people with that?
I think so. I think it would make a lot of sense. Just not entirely sure what it would look like, but I can help people grow their businesses and scale their businesses and build the infrastructure and like just being through it multiple times and coaching a lot of people through it and being on the side of it and having 4 kids and being married 20 years in September.
Wow.
I think my perspective and my wisdom is just it's unique. It's different. Like nobody else really at this level has it. The same perspective I have to give someone the permission to say, hey, you know what? That next level might not be another $100,000 for you. That next level might be you taking 2 weeks off with your family, or it might be, checking in with your team, and so it's just so easy to fall into the trap of pursuing more and more money and bigger and better. But what about like the quality of life and the richness of life and the deepness of life? And so I'm at this place where I'm looking at like, man, I don't need all these things to make me happy and feel fulfilled and satisfied. But that's what we've been sold, and that's what I've sold to people. And I think there is some truth to that. Like we want to grow and expand and take new territory. I think we were created for that, right? To be creators. But also a lot of times we idolize those things and we prioritize those things. And I don't think that's how we're meant to live.
Yeah. Making the wrong things our God. Yeah. I feel like that's such a common theme in like really hard charging and successful, financially successful entrepreneurs is that for a season the business becomes their idol or their god, and then they're losing track of all of those other things. And
Hmm.
very beginning I've always wanted to be someone who never lost track of those things, whether it's not spending time with family or and now my wife Megan, like we're both very very passionate about making sure that we're not leaving a trail of tears in the wake of our success. You know what I mean?
100%. It's really easy to fall into. So I think I could kind of be that mentor guide for maybe a younger generation who hasn't gone through that and just help them navigate that well. Where it's like, yeah, you can still have success, but how do we put the right parameters around, and make sure that you're prioritizing the right things and saying yes to the right things and no to the wrong things.
Dude, you did a training. Speaking of that, you did a training on constraints, I think. Was that you or was that Taylor that did that?
I've talked a lot about
I
constraints.
would love to hear you just break that down from a, like, we can workshop this for a second, but just talking about goal setting and
Hmm.
as it pertains to the constraints of your life. I would love if you could just break that down for us a little bit.
Yeah, well, this is something that I've struggled with in the past, and I've been really good at engineering growth and scale, and got to the point where it almost gamified. It's like, man, how could I get X with this certain parameter or constraint? And at one point, it was, how can we have multiple eight-figure businesses working 10 hours a week? And so when you start to put those constraints and those parameters around your goals, it forces you to put boundaries around other things in your life and your business where you can't say yes to so many things, right? It could be you can't say yes to a certain client, or you can't say yes to maybe in a growth season to go out and just party on the weekend or whatever it is. And so if you look at essentially, I want to hit X goal, but with X constraints. It forces your mind to go to the ends and then invert, right? So if I want to hit $100,000 a month in revenue on 10 hours of work a week, you have to figure out that problem, right? You have to solve that equation. So then in your brain, you start to do the work and say, oh, how many clients do I need to hit that? And what am I doing within that 10 hours? Well, I need systems, I need processes. And it was really fruitful for us to get to a place where we accomplish big things in little amounts of time. The things that we missed, though, looking back, is it's not enough just to have that for our level where we were. And by that I mean continual stewardship and enriching that process. Um, right? It's almost like a crazy hack and a growth hormone,
Hmm.
right? But it's not always the best way to go.
So you're saying that
Um,
constraints themselves, like adding constraints to your goals, is like a hack or a growth hormone. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, yeah, and I think that it's going back to the motive of why you're putting that constraint there. And is that in alignment with your integrity and your identity and your values, um, and your mission and your vision? If that's the case, then okay, it's probably healthy. But you can put constraints around something and do it out of a lot of greed, right? And it's like, okay, how can I sell as many of these things as possible in the least amount of time? And it's not really natural law all the time, right? Like it's not always fruitful and beneficial. So I think it's just something that we as humans, we have become so like productive oriented and to get the most out of the least oriented, right? Where it's not like as I'm going through my own process of slowing down, um, not that I won't use those concepts and think about it, but I also have a different filter now. It's like, is slow okay? Right? Is of course having boundaries and stuff, but it's just a different perspective of not just trying to get the most out of the least and trying to get the most leverage out of processes and people and every single penny I have. Um, because ultimately I don't know that that's the best way to go.
Hmm. That's
That's not the popular training on productivity.
well, so that's you said a lot of interesting things there. And while that would be the definition of financial success, you're suggesting that that is maybe not the best way to do it in order to be happy at the end, at the finish line. Is that what you're suggesting?
All right, what's the point of doing all the things that we do in business?
So we can be happy and fulfilled and spend more time with the people we love, have the freedom to do it whenever we want with whoever we want, right?
Yeah, and most people are chasing that thing and they come to the conclusion like, I don't need this. Like I get to this level, but I actually don't need that. And so I think the secret is finding that, like today, Landon, finding that place where you are in life. That's it, man. Not that you won't get some fulfillment and satisfaction on the work and the effort and the growth and expansion, but I truly believe that if we can find contentment in today with what I have today, my wife today, right? My house today, all these things today, like I think that is really, really powerful because you see it time and time again where entrepreneurs they chase the next thing, the next car, the next house, the next XYZ, and they never have that true level of fulfillment. And ultimately, that fulfillment's Jesus, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm not entirely sure what your beliefs are, but
Strong. They're with yours.
that's that satisfaction, it like ultimately comes from Jesus, I believe. And so I think I think we were created to have this basically um, gap, right, internally, and we try to fill it with so many different things, and we try to find our self-worth in so many different things that are external, whether it's success, my business, my family, my house, whatever. But then you always find yourself empty, like it never satisfied because it's not meant to, right? Only Jesus is supposed to satisfy that place. So sorry, just going on a little bit of a tangent, but
No, man,
this
you're knocking out my questions as I would ask them. So you're
this is just part of the process I've gone through, having successful businesses, and then having challenges in businesses and having recognition. It's like, like the wise king said, all this stuff is vanity. Like there's an interesting thought in that to where, um, I'm talking about Solomon, who is considered like one of the richest dudes ever, had this built this massive kingdom and had all this stuff. At the end of his life, is like, what is it all for? And I think it's so easy for us to get distracted by the next thing, the next level. And if we can find that joy today in the things that we have now, it's really, really powerful.
and I love that we bridge the gap into faith here because those are some of my next questions. When you were on your way, like you were in the more intense parts of your business career where you're getting up every single day and you guys are hustling to build this thing and you're scaling a huge 8-figure company and maybe even 9-figure at one point, and several 8 figures companies, what I should say. You guys were scaling these 8-figure companies. How did Jesus and how did your faith, how did you balance that all together?
I didn't. Um, I would say that I idolize success and I idolize money, and I put that in front of my faith. And there was a point where I didn't need God because I found my security and all these things and everything else, besides God. And so when we had challenges in the business last year, just being tired, like it put me into a place where I just had to reconnect with that and realign with God and my faith. And not that I was like some crazy, doing like weird things, but I put other things first. Um, and I think, God is a jealous God and he loves his children and he'll allow things and trials to happen. It's funny, last year I just turned 41, so last year was my 40th year, and there's this a significance of that in the Bible of that being related to testing and trial and transition. So it was just kind of hilarious that I went through trials and testing and just transitioning out of the business. But I think God's jealous and He'll allow us to be in those situations to draw us close. And I've had this thought, the Sermon on the Mount, everybody's heard of this, and even if you're not like a follower of Jesus, you've probably heard it at some point. It's Jesus is essentially manifesto on how to live in the kingdom. And he talks about blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I never really understood what that meant until last year when I realized it really is like, it's like, how do you, if you have money or you have cool things, like, right, what does that look like? And it's really a posture of your heart. When you identify that, like, I can't live and breathe without God. Like, I am. I am nothing without God. And that's what he's referencing. Like whether you own houses all over the world and you have successful businesses or you own nothing, it's all about the posture of your heart and realizing your need for God. Um, and that's where you really find true wealth.
Yeah, it's good. Wealth is power. I think about wealth from a perspective of being able to get up every day. Being grateful for the senses that you have, the ability to see, smell, taste, walk. I mean, just all the things that you can do on a given day because you have the power from God to do those things. Because if God forbid, you one bad disease enters your life, you don't really give a shit about ROAS anymore. Like that
Hmm.
cannot matter any less in your life, right? And I think that's a really powerful thing to remember when things are not going perfectly in the business and things aren't, going exactly how you want them to. Just realize that you have the power to wake up every day and try and correct those things, and the power to try and progress is wealth. Is
Yep.
kind of how I've tried to see it more within the last year. So
Yeah.
is that
100%, man.
do you believe that? Like, do you believe that as well?
Yeah. I mean, well, even in America, you if you actually I've traveled around the world. I've been third world countries. Like people in trailer parks are considered wealthy compared to most of the world, and so it's all perspective, right? And that's what I'm saying. Like we we have this notion of this next thing is going to make me happy and satisfy me and make me feel a certain way, but it does until it doesn't. And so it's realizing, man, how much we have right now, and how abundant we are right now, and it's pretty wild when you actually sit and think about it.
Yeah. And so you didn't really balance self-reliance and God. It just like kind of fell to one side and then it swung back the other way. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, man. From I was really financially insecure back in the day, and so that stuff carried over, and so that's why
What's
part of why I
back?
pushed so
Sorry.
hard.
What's back in the day? Like how long
So
ago?
I almost lost my house. Our first house we bought, it almost went to foreclosure in 2012. So that was a process that kind of happened over several years, like from the financial crisis from '08. Um, but just being at that place and being a father and a husband and having that shame and never growing up with money, I've like dealt with that financial insecurity. And it's even something now that I struggle with. But and just like childhood things that I'm uncovering, but um pushed so hard in the business so that I didn't have to feel insecure because it's like, okay, if I have all this money, then I don't have to like ever feel shame or ever have to feel this way again. Um, but it was a wrong prioritization, right? And it was just self-reliance, and it was which is it's not the way to go, especially if you're a believer and you follow Jesus, right? There's teaching about that. And it's so much pressure to be self-reliant. Like if it's me and it's everything that I do, um, then where does God come in on that picture? Right. So that's something that I've been learning this last year. It's like just the ability to let go and trust God and to take the right actions I feel like I'm supposed to take. Um, but just be in alignment with his truth.
I had to do that this morning. Literally. Like, yeah, like everything you just said. Like I went through that this morning where I was like, okay, I really want to control this and I want to put all of this on my shoulders right now. But that's not what we signed up for.
Hmm.
And so I think it's comforting to know that other people deal with that, especially ones that have been financially successful. And you obviously have an amazing family. You've got great relationships. But I think it's really cool that you still kept God at the center of those things, or at least if you didn't at one point, you found a way to put him back at the center of those things.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah, for sure.
Megan and I are really dedicated ourselves to that as well. So I'm going to
That's awesome, man.
thank you. Thank you. I'm going to switch the conversation up a little bit. I want to talk about discipline because I feel like you and Taylor also, you guys have just been massive mentors to me in this way. And you don't necessarily talk about this as much, but you show it and you do it. It's way more like caught, not taught. It's way more in your actions. So how did you develop your level of discipline that you have today, and how are you still working on that?
I think it was developed through necessity, and it's an ever-growing process. It came out of just my passion for growth, um, and having like, so what are my priorities in business and life, and setting those things in front of me every day. And I think that's the key is having it in front of you every day and being committed, just to be consistent. Like I just went through 75 hard, which is probably like the worst time ever when I did it a couple months ago, being burnt out. But it's just say, okay, this is my commitment, and I'm just gonna do it every day. And actually, I got COVID in the middle of it, and I still just did it because I said I was gonna do it. And discipline trumps really motivation and feeling. It's like, okay, if I'm going to commit to this and this is in alignment with where I'm at, where I'm going, I'm just going to show up. I'm going to do it. And I think it's really powerful because, again, if we go a lot of our feelings, man, we could be all over the place and not really accomplish much or hit the milestones. And so, discipline plus accountability, I think, is the powerhouse. Um, But in full transparency, the journey that I'm on right now, it's just like, wrestling with a lot of that stuff. And I'm wrestling with a lot of the notions and things of how I performed before, because I'm trying to find this new rhythm of, man, I could go and grow this new business and do all these things, but what's like the rhythm of the kingdom and like what God is wanting me to do, right? Um, and yeah, so finding like discipline in that and being committed. But I think maybe it's more so trying to find obedience and listening to God, like what he's saying, and saying yes and doing that. It could be even more difficult, um, than finding discipline. But there's practices I have that are really good. And I think if you have discipline, it should all be for the health of your life, right? Eating well, drinking a lot of water, journaling. So disciplines that I have every day that are non-negotiables for me essentially is journaling every day. I spend time in prayer and I study the scriptures because there's so much wisdom there. Um, Working out, I do breathing work, meditate.
A Wim Hof
Um,
action.
what's that?
Wim Hof, you do
Yeah,
the Wim Hof method. It's good.
yeah. So I do several rounds of that, and sauna and cold plunge, kind of like my
Love it, dude. Yes.
yeah, my go-tos. Just for my health, it's just good for my emotions and mental. And um so this is kind of my go-tos. And like, I've had other things that I've been like really stringent on in the past, but I'm trying to find the balance of giving myself grace, especially in this season of life. Because I've been hard on myself a lot in the past, and I've endured a lot of pain, and I've just taken it and carried a lot of people's burdens. And so I'm trying to find that rhythm of grace, um, to, yeah, like move forward and do those things, but also not shame myself, you know, um, for not doing certain things.
Yeah. That balance of holding yourself accountable without the negative self-talk.
Hmm.
I find that incredibly difficult personally. I think that's
Yeah.
I'm trying to strike that balance right now between like you just have to do smaller, and I try and like knock the tasks down, like lower the bar a little bit so at the beginning I can build up some momentum. And that's usually something that helps for me. Like the book Atomic Habits talks a lot about that of how do we just show what does he do? It talks about just like when you walk into the gym, that guy that built the habit, he wanted to like lose a bunch of weight and ended up building the habit of losing 100 pounds, or the end result was losing 100 pounds. But at the beginning, he started off by just like driving his car to the gym and literally just like opening the door and then leaving. And that built up to him like, doing like incredible feats and ended up losing 100 pounds of fat.
That's a really good point, man, because a lot of times, for me, I posted about this on my Facebook uh, account, just about being in a hurry so long and like rushing to the next thing and the next level and the next whatever. It's like, man, if you could take those small steps, that's really powerful,
Mhm.
So I applaud that.
That's good. So we talked a little bit about like what's next for you. But like if you have anything else you want to share on like what's next for you, I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, I can move on to my next questions.
No, just that, I'm probably going to consult some folks, might have a mentor group, maybe a small mastermind, just something deep, intimate, where I can give people frameworks and help them grow a really beautiful, amazing company in a healthy way and have the fullness of life.
Mm,
So
that's good.
that's what I'm thinking.
It's awesome. Well, you're a great person to model that way because I do you like I feel like when you're up and coming entrepreneur, you probably won't take advice from people who haven't tasted true financial success, where they don't technically have to work anymore. They go to work because they want to, not because they have to. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got that authority, from being through what I've been through. Not just successes, man, but the failures too. And I don't think enough people talk about that. Um, I've got a lot of successes, but I also have a lot of failures.
What's your what is the biggest learning lesson you pulled from your biggest failure, like, that you would talk about? I
Oh
feel like that's
man,
usually pretty personal.
gosh, dude, that's rough. I think there's so many, but so what I would do differently in regards to failures is I would be a better leader sooner. And I would identify exactly who I need and what I need them to do in the business so that I can make sure that I'm hiring the right person and I'm communicating the right expectations. Because we would hire people, we didn't really know what we wanted them to do, and our expectations would be crazy, ridiculous. And so I led a lot out of ambition and wanting to grow, and that cannot always have the best end result. So that's one thing that I would do differently is I would be a better leader a lot faster.
Hmm. That's good. That's super good. And that's going to affect everything. I mean, that has such a multiplicative effect inside the business. It's not just people, it's everything that those people are touching becomes way, way better. So that's powerful.
100%.
I always like to get in the mind of the people I'm interviewing and understand like what their habits are. So I'm really curious for when you study something, what are the practices that you put into place when you're studying? Do you read, like example would be like, I know Hormozy talks about how he will read something and listen to it at the same time on Audible. Do you have any like hacks like that when it comes to reading and retaining information?
I try to get through stuff as fast as I can to see if it's something that is going to be really meaningful for me. And when I find that, then I'll typically read it over and over. So I might go volume on getting a lot of books and just delving into them and seeing, okay, like there's gold to be dug up here. And if there is, then I'll just continue to dig. Like I'm on one book right now, like the fifth time.
What's that?
You know, it's called My Name is Hope.
Hmm.
It's by John Mark Comer. Another one I'm on this multiple times of is called Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Um, and yeah, I just have a list of those kinds of books. And ultimately, the best way to learn is to teach something, right?
Mhm.
So if I have that opportunity, it's something that I'll talk about to other people.
Yeah, I think that's one of the greatest things about coaching programs, honestly. Like when you get to teach on mindset and you're really interested in studying mindset, you have to go through all of that, make the PowerPoint, record the presentation
Hmm.
if it's in a training format. That's one of my favorite parts about putting trainings together.
Yeah.
That's good. Cool. Well, is there anything that you wish I would have asked you about? Anything that you would want to talk about that you want to share before we wrap up?
I'd say the only thing is I just encourage everybody listening to, design the life that you want, not a life that someone else has, and build your business to that aim. It could be 50 grand a month, it could be 200 grand a month, it could be whatever, but make sure you're not building someone else's dream. Build your own.
Wow. I'll let that resonate with everybody for a second. rewind, guys, hit the -15, the -30 on your app and re-listen to that over and over and over again, because that's so incredibly true. That I did that in the beginning. I built, definitely, like when I first started off our agency, I was like following somebody else's what I thought was blueprint, but I knew nothing about what they had actually built. And it's just fascinating. Like I couldn't have been more wrong about the model, like what I was
Yeah.
trying to build. So that's a really, really great point, is figuring out the business that works for you rather than trying to build somebody else's dream. That's solid. That's good, dude. You are so like wise beyond your years. Like I just appreciate you for that. And thank you
Thanks, bro.
for pouring your heart and soul into everything from the Evans and Welsh side. Like, dude, I got so much out of that training in the last year and a half. And we've got, we have a funnel that's working. We've got ads running. We've got,
I love it.
yeah, dude. And like those calls, the trainings, everything, we're just kind of like, they're all just like building blocks,
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just really grateful for you guys. So I really appreciate it, dude.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Spark to Fire. Make sure you go check out Mr. Chris Evans. Where should they find you? Where do you want to point them to?
On the Facebooks, I think it's just facebook.com/Chris A. Evans.
Chris A. Evans. Perfect. Guys, he's a great follow, constantly putting out good content, and you're going to want to stay in touch with him to see kind of what's next for this guy. And to make sure we keep getting more awesome people like Chris on the podcast, make sure you leave us a written review on Apple Podcasts, and also subscribe to YouTube so we can continue building up that subscriber base. That's the only fee for listening to the show. So hope you guys enjoy it and keep striking.